Hello, everybody. This is Lord PeteyTV here to give you another, little video of our new dungeons that we're going to be walking into. This one is going to be Uldaman Legacy of Tyr, so please go ahead and check it out. Hit that follow button and make sure you check us out on Twitch every single Monday through Friday from 3 to 11. Greatly appreciate you all, and I hope you all enjoy the walkthrough. Thank you. So the first boss you're going to be encountering in Legacy of Tyr in the dungeon Uldaman is going to be the Lost Dwarves. The Lost Dwarves consist of the three brothers, Belrog, Eric the Swift, and Olaf, and each one has their own individual abilities. Belrog ends up having a heavy arrow. When he aims an arrow, he inflicts damage to that individual and anyone else that gets hit by it, knocking them back. He has a cleave, which is in front of him, which deals damage to everybody that's in front of him. Eric the Swift, who ends up having an ability called the Skullcracker, which ends up, throwing his hammer in an area, and anyone within 5 yards of that is going to disorient them and slow them. And then he is going to also be throwing his dagger randomly at people, inflicting small amounts of damage. The other characters that Olaf is gonna also have some abilities too, which is gonna be the ricocheting shield, which means he's gonna throw a shield at people, it's gonna bounce, and it's gonna inflict some damage, and then it's gonna come back to him. He also has this defensive ability called the defensive bulwark. With this defensive bulwark, what ends up happening is he stands in one spot, puts his shield in place, and then everyone that is standing in there is going to take 75% less damage. You have to stun him, get him out of that, and then proceed forward. Now, the longboat raid, which is one of the abilities that all the dwarves are going to do, is that they're going to all jump in a boat together, and they're going to end up starting to fire their cannons all over the room. Now, what's going to end up happening is if you get hit by a cannon, you're going to get knocked back, and you're going to get damage, which is very, very moderate. But the big deal is that they're going to be ending up leaving fiery patches on the ground. Make sure that you don't stand there, and what will end up happening is you'll end up taking almost no damage, and then throughout that whole entire time, they're just going to continue to have a burst of damage to the rest of the raid. If one of the dwarves are killed during that time, the firing rate increases. The second boss you're going to be encountering here in Legacy of Tyr is going to be Bromach. He is a troll, and what he ends up doing is he ends up running around the room and DPSing you in multiple different ways. But one of his main things is he's going to be calling out to his friendly Trog buddies, and they're going to end up coming in and they're going to end up attacking you. There's an ambusher and a geomancer that do minimal damage if it's one or two of them, but as it gets larger and larger and larger, you're going to have more and more problems. He's also going to summon a Quaking Totem. This Quaking Totem is going to release a static shock, inflicting damage to all the players that are close to it, and when it is destroyed, it is going to cause what they call a cave-in, which is going to stun all the Throgs which are in that area and having them increase their difficulty. What I'm going to recommend you do is taking Bromach into that tremor when you end up having to DPS him down. When Bromach's also going to have a Lust ability, which he's going to cast on himself and other Throgs, which increases their haste for a short time. And then he's also going to have a Thundering Slam, which is going to hit the ground, and everyone is going to take a little bit of damage, but not too much. The third boss of the dungeon is going to be Sentinel Talendress. Now, Sentinel Talendress will be running around the room and dropping these resonating orbs in the room. These resonating orbs, if anyone touches them, you're going to be stunned for 6 seconds, so please be aware of that. She also does a Crushing Stomp, which is a wave of power that's inflicted to all damages and knocks people away. She also is going to, throw these blasted shards of stone at people, inflicting damage and causing them to have an additional bleed dot for 10 seconds. So be very, very wary of those. Now, one of the main abilities that she has that I want to talk about is this Ancient Daimo. which what ends up happening is she generates energy over time. Now, if you end up stunning her, it ends up resetting all that energy. Now, if you end up doing that to every time that you have a second to do that, she's going to end up gaining 10% additional damage each time. So you have to be very, very careful of that. And if she reaches 100% energy, she's going to be unstoppable to all crowd control abilities, and she's just going to go crazy to DPS you down. Now, you have to also be careful of not doing it too many times, because what will end up happening is she'll become immune to stun effects. Emberton, the fourth boss, is going to end up having a handful of very unique abilities that you probably have seen from other bosses, but ending up a little bit different because it's going to be a new set. So Emberton is going to end up doing this ability called Purging Flames, which is a channel beam flame that goes around the room, that rotates and inflicts a moderate amount of damage, so you're going to want to be careful of that. Now, this occurs when all the active Vault Keepers are defeated. Now, what he's also going to have is this Flame Wave. While channeling Purge Flames, he's going to end up releasing this wave of fire every 3 seconds to all players. He's going to have this Sacred Barrier that's going to form around him, which is going to make him immune to damage while this Purging Flames is active. And then he has this heat engine, which everyone that tries to get into the Sacred Barrier is going to end up taking damage and getting knocked back. Now, the keepers, or the 4 dormant keepers, if you will, are going to be around the room, and they're going to end up, you're going to have to end up dealing with those, and they're going to end up dealing damage by shooting balls at everybody. Now, Unstoppable Embers is something that Emberton has, and it's formed around random players for 3 seconds, and once it expires, the embers blow up and cause damage, fire damage, to all the players that are close by. While you're in the mythic difficulty, though, it's going to be targeted on all players. And then the last thing is going to be the Searing Clap, which Emberton claps his hands and ends up dealing damage to all players in the front of him. And the last thing is part of that is that it's going to have a dot that you're going to end up getting for very minimal damage for a couple of seconds. Now, the last boss we're going to talk about is Chrono Lord Delios. Now, Chrono Lord is going to have a lot of different abilities, so we're going to try to go through them very quickly. He's going to end up having a Sand Breath, which is going to be damaging players in front of him, so you got to be careful of that. You're going to end up having a Wing Buffet, where he ends up flapping his wings and knocking all players back, so you're going to have to be aware of that. But one of the bigger things that he has is this thing called Time Sync, which what ends up happening is he ends up targeting a character with a dot, and during that dot, they're going to get arcane damage, and they're going to have reduced, movement speed. Once it's removed, it's going to cause this thing called Time Eruption, and the eruption of excess time, quote unquote, is going to deal, middle damage to all players around them, 8 yards, and it's also going to be knocking them back. Now, the biggest thing that you're going to deal with is this thing called Eternity's Ebb and Flow. Chrono Lord is going to send a orb of sand onto the ground. If you end up being in that, you're going to take a little damage. But if you end up standing in it, it's going to end up slowing your haste for a large amount, and you're going to end up taking a small amount of arcane damage. Now, during that, during this time, he's going to end up causing this thing called Rewinding Time Flow. While that's going to happen is the screen's going to turn a different color, and you're going to end up, taking a little bit of, arcane damage. But while you're in this time frame, you're going to see those sand piles on the ground. You're going to want to stand in those, and what's going to end up happening is you're going to actually get a large amount of haste back. You're going to get about 50% of the haste back, and then after that, you just repeat the process over and over again. So it's pretty interesting. This dungeon is actually pretty cool. You know, even though it does feel a little bit on the long side, but the bosses in here are very, very unique, and I highly enjoy them. So thank you very much. Once again, this is Lord PeteyTV here to once again tell you to hit that subscribe button. I would like to thank you all very much for checking out these videos. I put a lot of work into them, and I greatly appreciate you all. Thank you so much. Have a fantastic rest of your day, everybody. Bye, everybody.